Welcome back to Globewise Entertainment, your ultimate destination for deep dives into Hollywood's most fascinating stories. Today we're uncovering the behind-the-scenes magic of 12, the making of an early 70s film classic. If you haven't subscribed yet, smash that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on more amazing film stories like this. And we want to know which early 70s classic is your all-time favorite. Tell us in the comment box below. Alright, let's jump right into the making of a timeless film that defined a generation. 1. The making of The Godfather, 1972. I'm gonna make them an offer they can't refuse. It was the early 1970s and Hollywood was in chaos. Studios were losing power, and a new generation of young rebellious filmmakers was clawing its way to the top. Out of this mess came a film that would forever change cinema, The Godfather. Paramount Pictures didn't believe in the project. They saw it as just another gangster movie, cheap, violent, forgettable. But when Mario Puzo's novel became a bestseller, the studio knew they had to act. They hired a young Italian-American director named Francis Ford Coppola, not because they believed in him, but because he was cheap and shared the book's heritage. Coppola had a vision, a dark operatic family saga that was more Shakespeare than Shootout. But the studio hated his ideas. They didn't want Marlon Brando. They didn't want Al Pacino. Coppola had to fight tooth and nail for both. At one point he was almost fired. Every day on set, he thought it would be his last. Brando was trouble from the start, demanding, unpredictable, and stubborn. To win the role, he stuffed his cheeks with cotton balls to create Don Corleone's jowls. It worked. A new legend was born. Meanwhile, Al Pacino was so quiet, so unconventional, that the studio wanted him gone. Coppola shot scenes out of order just to buy time until Pacino could prove himself in the now famous restaurant assassination scene. But it wasn't just the casting. The production was plagued with tension. Real-life mafia figures were suspicious of the film, and even pressured the filmmakers to remove the word mafia from the script. The film's iconic lighting, dim and shadowy, was nearly rejected for being too dark. But it became part of its unforgettable style. And then, against all odds, The Godfather hit theaters. Audiences were stunned. Critics praised it. The film smashed box office records, won multiple Oscars, and turned Coppola, Brando, and Pacino into legends. What began as a battle against the system became a triumph of art over interference. The film didn't just depict power, it became power. Behind the scenes, The Godfather was nearly a disaster. On screen, it became the greatest film of its time. 2. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. The making of a cinematic nightmare. In 1970, Stanley Kubrick set out to adapt Anthony Burgess's dystopian novel, A Clockwork Orange. What followed was a cinematic experiment that would become both legendary and deeply controversial. Kubrick, already famous for his meticulous style, decided to film in real bleak locations around London instead of building elaborate sets. Abandoned buildings, concrete housing blocks, and stark interiors gave the film its cold, haunting atmosphere. But it was Malcolm McDowell, cast as the charismatic yet violent Alex, who brought the film to life. Kubrick pushed McDowell hard. During the infamous Ludovico technique scene, McDowell's eyes were clamped open so long he scratched his cornea. He screamed in pain between takes, but the camera kept rolling. Kubrick's obsession with control became infamous. Every scene was shot dozens of times. He directed with silence or sudden outbursts depending on the day. The scene with the sing-in in the rain assault? That was improvised by McDowell, and Kubrick bought the rights to the song that same day, turning joy into terror. When A Clockwork Orange premiered in 1971, it shocked audiences with its ultra-violence, stylized sex, and nihilistic tone. It was banned in several countries. In the UK, death threats and copycat crimes led Kubrick himself to pull the film from circulation. It wouldn't be officially shown there again until after his death in 1999. Yet despite, or perhaps because of, the chaos behind the camera, A Clockwork Orange became an enduring classic. It blurred the line between art and anarchy, and its legacy remains one of the most daring, disturbing, and unforgettable productions in film history. 3. The French Connection, 1971. The making of a 70s film classic. The French Connection, 1971. In the gritty underbelly of early 1970s New York City, a revolution in filmmaking was quietly unfolding, and at the heart of it was The French Connection. Directed by a young and bold William Friedkin, the film would go on to win 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, but its creation was anything but typical. Friedkin wanted realism, raw, dirty, and unfiltered. The story, based on true events, followed 2 narcotics detectives, including the obsessive Popeye Doyle, played by Gene Hackman. The filmmakers shot on real city streets with minimal sets, little to no permits, and often without extras, capturing genuine reactions from unsuspecting pedestrians. But the crown jewel of the production? A car chase that rewrote the rules of cinematic action. Rather than choreographing a safe and controlled sequence, Friedkin filmed an actual high-speed chase through Brooklyn, with the stunt driver weaving through live traffic at 90 miles per hour. One near collision with a civilian car wasn't planned, but Friedkin kept it in the film anyway. At one point, he even held the camera himself while jammed into the back seat of the Pontiac Lemons. The production was chaotic, thrilling, and often dangerous. Gene Hackman, initially unsure he could play such a harsh, racist character, was pushed to the edge emotionally by Friedkin's intense direction. But the result was a gripping, pulse-pounding crime thriller that felt as real as the streets it was shot on. The French Connection wasn't just a film. It was a moment in cinema history, where the line between fiction and documentary blurred, and the spirit of gritty realism was born. 4. Deliverance, 1972. The making of Deliverance, 1972, a survival story on and off screen. When director John Berman set out to film Deliverance, he didn't just want to make a movie. He wanted to plunge his cast and crew into the wild, unforgiving heart of nature. Based on James Dickey's novel, the story followed 4 suburban men whose weekend canoe trip turns into a nightmare in the Georgia wilderness. But what happened behind the scenes was nearly as harrowing as what unfolded on screen. Berman insisted on authenticity. That meant no stunt doubles. Actors Burt Reynolds, Jon Voight, Ronnie Cox, and Ned Beatty performed all their own dangerous scenes. Reynolds was nearly killed when his canoe flipped and he went careening down real rapids. Voight climbed a cliff himself for a pivotal scene. No harness, just nerves and determination. Even more infamous was the filming of the disturbing squeal like a pig scene, which shocked audiences and cast a shadow over actor Ned Beatty's career. The emotional toll of shooting such intense material in isolation, surrounded by steep ravines, wild animals, and unpredictable rivers, pushed everyone to their limits. There were no permits for shooting on the river. No CGI. No safety nets. What you saw on screen was brutally real. Cast and crew were battered, bruised, and bonded by the end. And yet, that raw, dangerous approach worked. Deliverance became a box office and critical success, even earning 3 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. The Wild claimed a piece of everyone who made Deliverance, but it also gave them a classic that still echoes through film history today. 5. Chinatown, 1974. Filming began in 1973. When filming began on Chinatown in 1973, no one on set could predict it would become a definitive American masterpiece, or that its making would be almost as dark and twisted as the film's plot. Director Roman Polanski, still reeling from personal tragedy after the murder of his wife Sharon Tate in 1969, brought a brooding intensity to the set. He demanded full creative control, even rewriting the film's hopeful ending into something far more tragic. "Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown." That iconic line? Pure Polanski. Jack Nicholson, already a rising star, gave a cool, understated performance as Private Eye Jake Sheet, but things were far less smooth off camera. Tension brewed constantly between Nicholson and co-star Faye Dunaway, whose perfectionism clashed with Polanski's iron hand. One infamous story tells how Polanski, frustrated by a stray hair ruining a shot, plucked it from Dunaway's head himself. She reportedly stormed off set in fury. The production was full of paranoia, secrecy, and long shooting days. But somehow, out of the chaos, came a film that captured 1930s Los Angeles with chilling precision, full of corruption, murder, and decay beneath the sun-soaked surface. Chinatown wasn't just a noir revival, it was a requiem for justice. And its troubled, tense making only deepened the shadows behind its haunting beauty. 6. The Exorcist, 1973, a haunted masterpiece. When director William Friedkin signed on to adapt The Exorcist, few could imagine the chaos and controversy that would follow. Based on William Peter Blatty's novel, inspired by a real exorcism in 1949, the story of a young girl possessed by a demon was already chilling on the page. But bringing that terror to life on screen required more than just makeup and special effects. It demanded pushing boundaries, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The set was plagued by eerie coincidences. A mysterious fire destroyed the McNeil house set, all except Reagan's bedroom. Cast and crew injuries were frequent. 2 actors died shortly after filming, fueling rumors of a curse. Friedkin, obsessed with realism, resorted to shocking methods, firing guns near actors to provoke fear, yanking performers with hidden wires, and keeping Linda Blair in freezing temperatures to capture visible breath. Ellen Burstyn suffered a permanent spinal injury during a stunt gone wrong, the real scream heard in the final film. The Catholic Church condemned it. Audiences fainted. Paramedics were stationed at theaters. Yet The Exorcist became a box office juggernaut, earning 10 Oscar nominations, a first for a horror film. It wasn't just a horror movie, it was a cinematic exorcism, and the price of authenticity was real blood, sweat, and something close to madness. 7. Last Tango in Paris, 1972. In the shadowy corners of Paris, director Bernardo Bertolucci dared to push the boundaries of cinema with Last Tango in Paris, a film that would go down in history for both its bold artistry and troubling behind-the-scenes secrets. The film starred Marlon Brando as a grieving American man who begins an anonymous, emotionally raw affair with a young Parisian woman, played by Maria Schneider. From the start, the set was intense. Bertolucci wanted real emotion, not just acting. But what happened during filming became one of the most controversial stories in cinema. The infamous butter scene was never in the original script. According to later interviews, Bertolucci and Brando conspired to surprise Schneider with the scene, without her prior consent. The emotional toll was devastating. Schneider later said she felt violated and powerless, though no physical assault occurred. The experience haunted her for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, Brando was going through his own turmoil. He improvised many scenes and brought deep personal grief into his performance, creating a role that was both mesmerizing and disturbing. He later distanced himself from the film, calling it one of the most painful roles of his career. When Last Tango in Paris premiered, it was banned in several countries. Some labeled it obscene. Others called it a masterpiece. In Italy, copies were ordered destroyed, and Bertolucci lost his civil rights for 5 years. Despite or because of its notoriety, the film sparked intense debates about consent, art, and the limits of realism in cinema. It remains one of the most polarizing productions of the 1970s, haunted by its legacy, unforgettable in its impact. 8. Mean Streets, 1973, the making of a gritty masterpiece. In the early 1970s, a young filmmaker named Martin Scorsese set out to tell a deeply personal story about life in the tough, Italian-American neighborhoods of New York City. With a shoestring budget and a fierce passion, Scorsese embarked on making Mean Streets, a raw and authentic glimpse into the struggles of loyalty, faith, and survival. Filming was anything but easy. Shot mostly on the streets of Little Italy, Scorsese and his crew operated guerrilla style, often capturing scenes without permits. The actors, including a young Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel, brought a powerful intensity to their roles, many improvising dialogue to keep the feeling real. The production was intimate and chaotic. Scorsese's personal connection to the story infused the film with honesty and grit, creating moments that felt less like scripted drama and more like real-life unfolding. The sound of street noise, the neon-lit bars, and the palpable tension in the air all became characters themselves. When Mean Streets premiered, it wasn't just a film. It was a bold statement from a new voice in cinema. The film's raw style and moral complexity paved the way for Scorsese's legendary career and marked a turning point for American independent filmmaking in the 70s. 9. The Last Picture Show, 1971. The making of The Last Picture Show, 1971. In the dusty, small Texas town of Anarene, the spirit of a fading America quietly unfolded, both on screen and behind the scenes of The Last Picture Show. Directed by Peter Bogdanovich, the film was a daring, tender look at youth, loss, and loneliness in a dying town. But making this masterpiece wasn't without its own drama. Bogdanovich, a young director then, chose to shoot the film in black and white, a bold artistic decision that captured the stark, nostalgic mood of the story. But filming in a tiny Texas town presented many challenges. The cast and crew worked in sweltering heat, often cramped in makeshift sets. Yet, the small-town community embraced the production, lending authenticity to every frame. Off-screen, tension simmered as Bogdanovich navigated complex relationships with his cast, including the rising stars Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, and Sybil Shepherd. Their youthful energy clashed at times with the melancholy tone of the story, but that tension added to the film's emotional depth. When it premiered, The Last Picture Show was hailed as a poignant, unflinching portrayal of American life on the brink of change. Its raw performances and haunting black and white visuals have since become a touchstone of early 70s cinema, forever marking it as a true classic. 10. Patton, 1970. In the world of war movies, Patton stands tall as a commanding giant. Behind this cinematic masterpiece was a production filled with challenges and unforgettable moments. Director Franklin J. Schaffner had the daunting task of bringing to life one of World War II's most complex and controversial generals, George S. Patton. To capture Patton's larger-than-life personality, they needed an actor who could fully embody his forceful spirit. Enter George C. Scott. Scott's portrayal was electric, intense, powerful, and unapologetically bold. He didn't just play Patton, he became him. His dedication was so absolute that he famously refused to accept the Best Actor Oscar, objecting to the competitive nature of the awards. Filming was an epic undertaking, requiring massive battle scenes, tanks, and thousands of extras. The production balanced the grand scale of war with intimate character moments, showcasing not only the military genius, but also the flawed humanity of Patton. The film's famous opening speech, delivered against a backdrop of the American flag, set the tone brash, inspiring, and unforgettable. It's a scene that still resonates decades later. In the end, Patton wasn't just a war movie. It was a bold exploration of leadership, courage, and the cost of greatness, brought to life by a team willing to push boundaries in the early 1970s. 11. Cabaret, 1972. The making of Cabaret, 1972. A bold new musical. In the early 1970s, Hollywood musicals were on the decline, audiences were drifting away, and many studios saw them as outdated. But director Bob Fosse had a radically different vision for Cabaret, based on the hit Broadway show and set against the darkening backdrop of 1930s Berlin. Fosse didn't want a typical musical full of glossy, cheerful numbers. Instead, he aimed for a raw, edgy, and provocative film that blurred the lines between entertainment and social commentary. He pushed his actors hard, demanding not just perfect dance routines but also emotional intensity and complexity. Liza Minnelli, playing the fiery Sally Bowles, became the heart and soul of this daring vision. The film's boldness extended beyond style. It tackled themes of decadence, political unrest, and the rise of fascism, all underscored by the haunting cabaret nightclub scenes. Fosse's signature choreography and direction gave the film a dark, sultry energy unlike anything Hollywood had seen before. Despite studio skepticism, Cabaret was a critical and commercial success, winning 8 Academy Awards, including Best Director for Fosse. It redefined what a musical could be: edgy, relevant, and unforgettable. The making of Cabaret wasn't just about dance and song. It was about breaking new ground, challenging audiences, and capturing the restless spirit of an era teetering on the edge of chaos. 12. Harold and Maude, 1971. The making of Harold and Maude, 1971. In the early 1970s, Hollywood was awash with bold, experimental films, but Harold and Maude stood out as something truly different. Directed by Hal Ashby in his feature debut, the film tells an offbeat love story between a morbid young man and a lively older woman. It was unlike anything audiences had seen. Dark humor mixed with whimsical warmth. Making Harold and Maude wasn't easy. The script, written by Colin Higgins, was quirky and unconventional, challenging studio executives who worried about its strange subject matter and unconventional romance. Ashby, known for his rebellious spirit and fresh vision, fought hard to keep the film's unique tone intact. Filming took place in San Francisco, and Ashby encouraged his cast, especially Bud Cort, Harold, and Ruth Gordon Maude, to improvise and bring authenticity to their roles. The chemistry between the two leads felt natural and heartfelt, thanks to Ashby's trust in his actors. Despite its innovative storytelling, Harold and Maude didn't initially find commercial success. Audiences were unsure about a dark comedy that celebrated life through death and unconventional love. But over time it became a cult classic, beloved for its charm, originality, and the courage it took to make such a different kind of film in the early 70s. Hal Ashby's Harold and Maude remains a testament to creative risk-taking, proving that sometimes the most unusual stories become the most unforgettable. And that wraps up our look at the fascinating making of Harold and Maude, one of the most unique film classics of the early 70s. If you enjoyed this dive behind the scenes, don't forget to subscribe to Globewise Entertainment for more amazing stories from Hollywood's golden eras. Now we want to hear from you. Which early 70s film classic is your favorite? Drop your pics and thoughts in the comment box below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.